You're listening to Football for Girls. I'm Bailey.
I'm Grace.
And I'm Ashley.
We are very excited to be joined today by our local high school football coach, Brian Lewis. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks, ladies. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you doing this. I think it's a very neat deal.
Thanks. We are excited to have you, and it's awesome to we love talking with kind of local sports are important to us, obviously, and so kind of making something that's big smaller is important, and we're hoping that other people will hear this and kind of know how to support their local teams and coaches better. So we appreciate you joining us. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey. What led you to become a football coach?
Actually, my journey isn't too crazy because I kind of knew I wanted to teach and coach from a young age. My dad is a longtime teacher and a coach, so I grew up on the field. I grew up on the court. I grew up in the gym. I tell people, me and my brother, my dad was a head basketball coach at a place at a high school in Royal Oak. And at halftime, me and my brother would play one-on-one against each other. I was 3, he was 6, and we would go back and forth. So I've been on the court. I've been doing stuff forever. I went to Warren de La Salle, played football, basketball, and baseball. I was fortunate enough to have some success there. But as you know, playing 3 sports, it's a lot, and especially at de La Salle, it's a lot. So ended up going to the University of Michigan. Knew I wanted to stay involved. Got involved with the football program as a student manager. Just kept asking for more work, and it's amazing what people do, especially in this industry in football. If you're willing to work for free, it's amazing how much work people are willing to give you. You know, so
always looking for free labor.
Yeah, right. So did a lot of working for free. Did a lot of things moving up. Just kept asking questions, and ended up becoming a student assistant. And then when Coach Rodriguez, I was under Coach Rodriguez, when he got let go at Michigan, Coach Hope came in, I had to student teach. And luckily I made enough connections to stay on in recruiting and operations for a little bit. And then Coach Rodriguez ended up getting a job in Arizona, called me up and said, hey, we want you to come down and be the slot wide receiver coach, come be the GA. I went to Coach Hope's office and I said, I have this opportunity, but I would love to stay. My wife was moving back up. No, it was my girlfriend at the time was moving back up to Michigan. So I was fortunate enough to stay at Michigan, and I becoming a wide receiver, graduate assistant, analyst for 3 years. And then we got let go, and I bounced around high school for a little bit, starting off at Father Gabriel Richard High School. I was a head coach there, then Plymouth High School, and then found home here in Howell.
Awesome. So was football, it sounds like football was always the goal, even though kind of basketball and baseball were also a big part of your high school life.
No, to be honest, I always loved the other sports more than football.
Oh,
my
interesting.
brother was my brother was the big shot in football. He was a BMOC, big man on campus, right? Scored a lot of touchdowns, good player. I was always the guy that was a role player growing up. I was always a role player. And I actually wanted to quit my sophomore year. And my coach, my dad was a coach. My dad was a coach on the football team. And I wanted to quit and focus on basketball and baseball because everybody kept telling me those were my better sports. And my coach talked me out of it, gratefully, luckily. And then senior year, I wound up being the quarterback. And then that's kind of when my football journey took off, and my love for football really took off having that experience.
That is awesome. So high school sports were obviously very, very important to you, and kind of the role your coach had, even, it sounds like, really kind of changed the trajectory of things.
Absolutely. It's a tough sport, so you face a lot of adversity, and sometimes you just need a good old kick in the pants and say you can do it,
Yep.
How would you describe the role of sports, like particularly football, in the lives of high school students and like in your life as a high school student?
Yeah, well, obviously football was a major factor for me. See, what kids don't realize now, because there's so much other social things happening with social media, that was our social outlet. There was no phones. There was no Twitter after. There was no social media outlet. That was our social outlet. So for us, my parents always told me either I'm playing a sport or I'm working. So that was our social. That was our deal. We were heavily involved, and I played 3 sports my entire career.
Oh, wow. So yeah, that's really cool. Do you think football contributes, or how do you think football contributes to the overall development of a student's character and discipline?
There's nothing like it. I mean, the delayed gratification you get from football, that feeling when you win a big game, I always tell the guys this. It's a top three feeling. Okay, I don't tell my wife. The birth of a kid is number one. It's a feeling unbelievable. My wedding day and asking my wife to like when I propose to my wife, that's number two. Winning a big football game that you're not supposed to win, that people don't think you're supposed to win, that's number three. That's how that's and we won in basketball and I've won in baseball. But there was nothing like the delayed gratification of working so hard for something and then accomplishing a tough goal. That's why football is great. So it builds a lot of character, builds a lot of resiliency, builds a lot of toughness. Like I said, when we hopefully like in our program, what I always say is when you walk out, the building blocks of our program are who we want you to be when you're going on to your next steps. So if you walk out with a belief in yourself, if you walk out with a discipline in your life, if you walk out with a grit, a resiliency, and you understand the bigger picture that you're involved with more than just yourself, man, you got a good chance to be set up for success when you go on to your next step. So I think those are the roles that that football in particular instills in kids, and it's a lifelong thing.
Yeah, and I think they can apply like that same like work ethic to like other areas of their life too. And I think it definitely like helps them become like better students and just overall better people in pretty much every
Think
aspect.
about the time management. Think about all the things that like later on in life you have to do, and like during football season, all the things you have to accomplish, right? Not only do you have to be high level physical, you have to be mental, and then you have to get your academics done on top of it. And then if you want a social life, if you so choose, then that on top of it, right? So you got a lot going on.
Well, and football's a year-round sport. Like you do things all summer and then you have like workouts throughout other sports too. It's all year.
Oh yeah. I
Oh,
mean, that's just the way it is now, right?
yeah. No. How do you help students navigate the recruiting process and like support your players who inspire to play at the collegiate level?
All right. So I was heavily involved in recruiting for a while at Michigan, like heavily involved, like ground floor, right? So I got a pretty good base of like understanding what people are looking for. All right. The one thing is you got to be realistic with the level at which you want to play. Okay. Because the coach is going to come in and they're going to see us. So you got to be realistic at the level. So here's how I kind of the general progression goes. Okay. Freshman year, unless you're a freak, you're not going to get recruited. Sophomore year going into your junior year, I always tell people pick two camps of local colleges you would like to go to. So and even if like you don't know if like football wise you're going to go there, but like hey, I'm interested maybe in that Grand Valley. I'm interested in Alma. I'm interested in Michigan Tech. So go to one of those places and experience that place. So hey, I kind of like the vibe at college here, or I don't like it here. Then going into your junior year, you got to ramp it up a little bit. That's when you want to kind of identify, all right, this is kind of a couple of colleges I'm a little bit more serious about, and the coaches want to see you. They've been burned too many times by high school coaches, so they don't listen to us anymore. They want to see the person live. They want to see the person run. They want to see how tall he is, how long he is. So I always recommend going to a few camps that way, and then going into your senior year for sure. You gotta really identify where you want to go, what you want to do, and a lot of those smaller colleges who recruit us the most recruit going into your senior year. So the junior year kind of sets you up if you want something a little bit bigger, but the smaller colleges tend to recruit just going into their senior year because of all the flux that goes on with people dropping levels and all that stuff. So, and then when coaches come in, I send out a master sheet of all of our kids, and if they have huddle highlights, obviously I recommend making a huddle highlight. I send out a sheet of all of our kids, our measurables, what they do, and their huddle highlights to every college in Michigan, every college in Ohio. I try and hit the Indiana colleges I know that come and recruit us, but I really try and recruit the colleges to help recruit our kids because, and I don't know if they watch it. Like I said to the parents, I don't know if they watch it. I don't know, right? But I send it out trying to promote our kids and promote our program.
Well, and I think the
recruitment process for football is so unique because you have baseball and basketball and soccer even and volleyball where you can like go to tournaments and go to like showcase tournaments, but you don't really have that in football. So I feel like you have to be a lot more like precise and like have a certain strategy of how you're gonna like attack the process.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of buddies. I got a lot of buddies in the NFL, and they all say it's the same thing with the combine. They don't really want to watch you run around in shorts and underwear. They want to see you play. They want to see you do football things, right? So that is a big part. They want to see you play football, and that is different. You're right, because volleyball, you play the game in your AAU or travel. You're playing the game. They see you, right? But ball, you only get 9 shots, and then if you're lucky, you get some wins, you get in the playoffs, and then you get 10, 11 if you keep winning.
Yeah, definitely. It's not as easy access as a lot of other sports, I think, when it comes to, college coaches being able to watch you come play.
Absolutely.
So changing gears a little bit, what role do you think that the community plays in supporting and fostering the success of, the local football program?
The community, like what
Yes.
role do they play? So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
huge. I mean, that's why you come to a place like Howell, the one school, one town. It is a thing, like among coaches, right? I was in a previous place that I was at. There was 3 schools on one campus. Very difficult to build a culture. Very difficult to build a community within your own walls when everybody's walking in between walls, right? So, the community aspect of things is so huge. I can't explain it because a school like Howell, who's not a perennial powerhouse, right? So we're that top tier team that's in the final 8 every year. That's not been Howell, right? So what gives you an advantage to boost you to try and get you into those tiers that are above you, right? Having a strong community can really do that to a program, right? Having the backing, having the support of the entire program can boost your team to play better and at a higher level. There's nobody going at each other, nobody going at each other. Like that is so huge because your football community is big, and then the surrounding community. I mean, how nice is it to walk into high school and every year your football team is good? Like that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We're going to be good. You don't know how good we're going to be or where we're going to go, but you're going to be pretty good in football, and it's going to be a good fall for you. So it kind of sets the tone, right, for the rest of the year, and kind of the excitement of the community and the school. It's able to set the tone, and we have such a great atmosphere in Howell. It's really a sight to behold. I mean, I really encourage people to come see it because it's just a phenomenal community gathering, and it's a lot of fun.
I agree. We have to get there so early in order for all of us to be able to sit together at the games. And to your point, I think it is so different. Like the one school, one town, compared to like PSEP, like you said, or I grew up in Ann Arbor. So, there's 3 high schools and it's just a completely different mindset in the community, if everybody is behind one team versus all the different, factors with the other teams.
Absolutely.
So switching gears again, what do you think the main rule differences, or what do you know are the main rule differences between high school football and college football?
All right. So I did some research for you ladies too, so I could be a little bit more accurate. All right. But here's the big one are the dimension changes of the hash. Okay. So here's what you got to realize with football. Football is very rarely played in the middle of the field. The ball is very rarely in the middle. So that most of the game, 80% of the game is played on a hash. Okay. So that dictates where you want to run, where you want to go schematically. Okay. So in high school, in between hashes is 53 feet, 4 inches. So we're the widest. So you got to think about our boundary. Our boundary is very small. So now a lot of teams like to run to the boundary. You want to run to the field, right? Got more space to the field.
Mm-hmm.
NCAA, it's 40 feet, so it's in even more. So more boundary run teams or more predicated boundary run teams compared to field run teams. In the NFL, it's 18 feet, 6 inches. Why? All those guys are so fast. They want to keep the ball in the middle of the field, so there's more space on the hash. So all those guys, so it's more of a balanced field. Does that make sense? So
Yep.
the number one difference is that dimension. So when you get on a hash, you have only a certain amount of space before you get into the boundary, which is the 12th defender. So offensively, it plays a factor. Defensively, how you can approach it plays a factor as well. Do you put more guys in there? Do you put less guys into the boundary? All plays a factor predicated on, do they like to run in the boundary? Do they not? Are they a field run team? Probably, because the boundary's so tight, right? So that would be the biggest one from like a dimensional standpoint. The play clock rules have kind of started to become more uniform all the way down. So right after the ball gets run, it gets down, there's a 40-second clock. It starts immediately. So the ref blows a whistle, 40-second clock goes. Now, after a first down, in high school and college, the clock stops. So the clock stops, set the chains. NFL clock keeps going. Okay. 2-minute warning in the NFL. Don't have it, right? In high school. Don't have it. So that's a big deal because that's another stoppage. So how you use your timeouts and that schematic advantage plays a factor because you got an extra stoppage when you get into the NFL. Okay. So that's a big rule because that's a timeout, essentially. Right? So how you spend your timeouts, how you utilize your timeouts at the end of a half, at the end of a game, that plays a factor in your clock management, right? Okay, here's another one. So field goals, okay? If you kick a long field goal, say you kick a 50-yarder, okay? In the NFL, where does the ball go to? The spot of the kick. So people get nervous to kick 50, 60-yarders, especially in 2-minute situations, because if you got 30 seconds left, get the ball at midfield, it takes two catches, and then they can kick a field goal. In high school, if you kick a field goal and it goes into the end zone, it's a touchback, and the high school starts at the 20. So the ball comes out to the 20, and then they start there. So that's another big rule difference. And you got to know that because a couple years ago, the team we played had a really good kicker. I mean, could really boot it. They opted to punt instead of go for the field goal. The guy ended up punting it into the end zone anyway. So you might as well have just taken the shot to kick the field goal because this guy could kick it that far, because the ball's going to come back out to the 20. You didn't even give yourself a shot, and then you punted it into the end zone anyway, so the end result's the same. So you kind of got to know that rule. So just kick it, because it's a punt. The punt's probably going to go in the end zone anyway. Just kick it, right? So you got to know some of those
Nothing
rules.
to lose.
Yeah, the dimensions, the goalposts are a little bit wider. So like when teams play at Ford Field, it's a narrow goalpost, so you might see a couple more missed extra points, So things like that. Those are the real big rule differences. As far as tackling, contact, pass interference is a spot foul in the NFL, 15-yard penalty in high school. So if a guy gets run by, tackle him instead of giving up the touchdown, do that instead of giving up the spot fouls. So those are the major rule differences, though, that I found that applied.
Well, especially the hash one, like that is, I kind of knew that, but I did not realize how much it affected the strategy, and that's a huge difference.
Oh yeah,
like 53 to 18 feet, like dramatic.
Yeah.
So crazy.
So in high school, then, does that kind of set you up more, or set most teams up more as like a run heavy versus pass heavy? Like, how does that kind of affect those sorts of decisions?
Well, if you want to get into that discussion, because that's a whole nother but really what the dimensions do first and foremost is it just closes down your boundary run game. It in college, there are teams, because typically it's schematic on how you put a guy into the boundary. What technique do you play? All these things into the boundary, right? So teams predicate their entire run package off of boundary runs. Like when I was with Coach Rodriguez, boundary run heavy. You were going to run into the boundary a lot, So it just depends, and you can't really do that with the dimensions as far as high school goes, right? As far as passing to running, all about investment. So it's just like your money. What do you invest in your money in? Are you going to invest into something that's going to grow and be executable at the highest of levels, right? Is it going to grow and be the most efficient at the highest stressed moment, right? Or do you want to invest in a different avenue so you know that it is going to come through at that high stress moment? That's really what high schools are boiling it down to. What do you want to invest in? You want to invest in all the passes, or you want to invest in your run game? And if you go from that, everybody's got their own flavor, and the only thing I always tell people is win at the place you're at. So whatever you choose, make sure that those kids can execute whatever you decide.
Yeah, and to that point, obviously it kind of depends too on what your personnel is and what you can make happen with the players that you have, play to their strengths.
Yeah, if you're going to throw a short pass, right? So bubbles, a little perimeter screen, as a coach, you want to throw that as an extension of your run game. So you want that guy to make somebody miss and get a little bit more than what you actually allotted for, right? You got to have a guy that can do that. You have a guy that can do that. You're going to throw it out there, and they got to catch the snap, throw it, catch it, and then run it with a blocker out there. So there's a lot that's got to go right if you don't got a guy that can make something happen just in space, right? So you got to weigh those options.
Yep. And kind of along those lines, so, especially at the varsity level, which, you're developing them freshmen and JV also, but, on your team specifically, you have players for 2, maybe 3 years, kind of depending. So what does it look like to develop a team and a strategy long term when, obviously it's high turnaround because, you have kids moving through high school?
This is a great question. Okay. And this is a great question because it's a deep philosophical question among coaches, right? How do you do that? How do you build it? How do you build it so you have a good, sustainable program where they come in, right, through the course of time and it's just a cycle, right? That's what you want, right? Mm-hmm. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult task to maintain, right? Building a program through multiple levels and all of those things. And it takes an extreme amount of evaluation. Okay. So like every year postseason is Aaron Rodgers goes into the dark room or whatever, right? Not that, but most football people, like most people that are in it, need a couple of weeks after the season to just digest what the heck happened. Because you got to remember, as a coach, you get done with the season, you probably got a week or 2 weeks to like clean up, wrap up, all that stuff where you're still working. And then you need time to decompress and reevaluate. So how do you do that? How do you build that sustainability? Well, it depends on the program that you're in. You gotta be able to try to create some sustainability. It goes all the way down to the youth. Your youth football programs should be aligned. Like in Howell, we have the fortunate we have a youth program. Not everybody's got a youth program, right? So trying to get some alignment there so the kids are semi-familiar with high school and the coach and me, and I'm familiar with them. That's a huge step, right? Then what is executable for your kids, right? So is it executable at the freshman level? Is it executable at the JV level? Is it executable at the varsity level? So when you build your base stuff in, you want it to be executable among those levels. And then depending on your level, it grows from there. So if you could build that sustainability piece, I might have got, that's the goal. How do you do it? It's a big philosophical discussion among coaches, because it's really a difficult task. You just build a system and get everybody involved. You let people kind of grow and, you kind of use them as they grow. It's a tough deal, as a coach, as you're building.
Well, I would imagine even the strategy behind how to do it shifts year to year as the players shift. Like, what do we have to focus on now? How can we bring up the other people? Like it probably just is always kind of evolving.
Yeah. It's always evolving. And then the question for every good coach is sustainability over time. So can you get that to whatever you're tweaking? Can you get the base things in to those kids? So when you do tweak it for those kids, it's effective.
Mm-hmm. And I think you bring up a really good point, especially with how big the youth football program is and Howell, kind of having a commonality starting at a young age so that they can prepare, if they choose to play in high school and everything plays a big role.
Well, I know just even as a member of the community, like one of my favorite games every year is the game where during halftime, the little first graders run out and do their like demo scrimmage out on the field. And that gets them even thinking in first and second grade, like, I could be on this field someday. Like, I mean, it's just so exciting to them with the lights and the crowd. And
yeah, you got to remember what the high schoolers look like when you were in second grade, third grade, right? Those were big kids at the time. So when they're in their gear and whatnot, and you get to see them live and say, man, that's pretty cool. That's always effective.
Oh, yeah. So switching gears a little bit from on the field to your role as a coach off the field, how do you balance the role of being kind of a motivator and holding players accountable, like both on the field and off the field? Because like you have standards for their conduct and academic success. How do you balance that?
It's becoming harder and harder in high school. It just is. It's becoming harder and harder with the amount of red tape that goes along with holding kids to a standard and holding kids accountable. The big thing that you get when you hold kids accountable now is they're holding the I'm not going to play over your head. So this is a little bit of an epidemic, right? Because then what's it look like from the outside looking into your program if these kids are quitting? Not good, right? From the outside. But at the same time, how are you going to build a program and help like have a standard and keep people accountable if you're not going to hold the standard as yourself as a coach, right? So building that and having that accountability and really building it so the guys are more accountable to each other, more so than accountable to a coach or accountable to a code of conduct. I heard this, a team with a lot of love doesn't need a lot of rules, right? So if they're loving each other, if they're trying to make good decisions with each other, typically they do a good job. In the best teams, to be honest with you, the best teams hold each other accountable. That's really what it boils down to.
And is that something that as a coach you like, I guess, coach up your like captains about and your seniors about, or how do you try to instill that?
Yeah, so try and instill it in some leadership people, right? So only a certain amount of people want leadership too. That's what you find out. So the people that do want some leadership, right? You gotta build them up into being strong enough people to handle certain situations, adverse situations from a peer standpoint, right? So developing those kids for those situations. As a coach, you always know the guys that are fringe guys too. So you gotta keep a pulse on those guys. You gotta make sure that you understand where those guys are at and what are they doing to the team? Are they affecting the team positively, negatively? What do you have to do there? So you got to keep your pulse on those kids too. But, at the end of the day, right, again, the accountability comes from the standard that's created within the program. And the kids, they got to hold each other to that standard. They got to hold each other to that level. And if they're not willing to do that, you're going to face a tough time in the middle of your season where the coach isn't going to be able to come rescue the team, right? They got to be able to do it themselves.
I feel like a big part of like players holding each other accountable is also like team bonding and doing things like that. Do you guys do a lot of like team bonding events?
Yeah, we try. It's hard during the winter and spring to do it because everybody's doing so many different things with sports, like different sports and whatnot. So we call phase 3 for us. So we break our year up into phases. Phase 3 for us is what I call the summer bond. So that's when all of our stuff starts to happen where school's done. Monday we start, it's just us, just being together, and we do our bonding things throughout the summer. We do a couple of things that one keeps the kids overnight. They get to hang out all night, keep us awake, us coaches awake all night because I like to stay up, right? Just camps, just we have a lot of food at all of our camps. So I think gathering and eating and just conversing is a positive culture builder. Food since the test of time has brought people together, right? What's any different from us, right? So we eat,
Especially
so
high
the
school
guys get,
boys.
yeah, right, exactly. So we eat, so the guys are next to each other, but yeah, trying to build connections, do little things along the way to try and get the guys to know each other and understand each other and trust each other, right? So we do those things throughout the summer.
I know it was really cool. One of the players in the program who lost his mother unexpectedly this year, seeing the rest of the team come alongside him and
Yeah,
like organize ways to support him and make sure he knew he was loved and that he had a community. Like I think that just speaks so much to what you've instilled in those boys. And it was neat to see that
appreciate
happening
that.
like even completely outside of football.
Yeah, yeah. A lot, honestly, a lot of it is we have great kids and great parents, so the kids understand the empathy aspect of things already, so that helps, right? But then,
Mhm.
yeah, you go through so many struggles. I hope these guys bond. If this sport was easy, everybody would do it because everybody wants the glory from
Right.
the sport, but the hard work that goes into it. So these little things of coming together, I would hope that they do those things because it does go a long way as building team character.
Absolutely. Does any story come to mind when you think about like students that you've coached throughout the years and kind of a player that you think like you could see the impact you had on them both kind of on and off the field and how it kind of affected their life or how being a part of football in general affected their
Yeah.
life?
Yeah, yeah. As a coach, you go along and that's the fulfillment piece because obviously in high school you don't get paid a lot. So why do you do it?
Mhm.
As sappy as this is, you do it for that. You're right. You do it for the connections that you create and the impact that you can have on kids. So hopefully, there's been kids along the way that you just get really close to and kids along the way that you get an emotional attachment with as a coach because the hard work and dedication that they put in. So I guess a specific story would probably be my quarterback at Plymouth as a junior. I got to Plymouth late as a junior, really struggled. Peers, everybody, Adam, I mean, teammates, Adam, like, man, this guy, I'm not sure, right? And he really put his nose to the grindstone in the offseason and built a lot of rapport with a lot of guys. And what we did is for him, I started to show everybody else how competitive he was. I started competing against him in sports. So like we'd be in class and I would compete against him so he could show off because I knew it was in him, but he needed the other guys to see it. So we would compete a lot in sports and we grew and developed. And as a senior, he was phenomenal, had an unbelievable year. And then I ended up going to Wittenberg University, play quarterback there. Never thought he could, never thought he would. And then ended up going and had the confidence, the leadership, the independence to go play quarterback at a college level because that's a very, very difficult and high level thing to do at any college. So giving him the framework, the pillars to go accomplish that was extremely rewarding along the way. And we're obviously like I would say a mentor mentee, right? So
Mhm.
with a mentor mentee relationship that takes a lot of different forms, right? Sometimes it's tough love, sometimes it's uncle, sometimes it's friend, but at the end you still connect and you still can talk, so we still talk. And he's always up to date on how things. And really my quarterbacks along the years, I had a kid that I coached at a previous school that still comes to our games and extremely successful in his life. And some of the things that we've done helped him propel him along the way. So there are a couple stories. Yeah, there's stories along the way. You don't like to, as a coach, you get sappy with it, so you don't like to go, too far into all of them. But there's some along the way for sure.
That's awesome. So as a coach, I know you said like obviously like high school coaches, you don't get paid a ton. That's not why you got into high school football coaching. But what does a successful season look like for you? Like how do you benchmark success in your program?
I mean, honestly, I really want the kids to stick together, and I really want the kids to walk out with the program standards instilled into them. So if they're able to do that, that's
Mhm.
successful, right? Success is how we determine it essentially I mean, what is success? That's the age-old question, right? So
Right.
that's really if you can stay together through the thick and the thin, like you could really stick together throughout something. You've grown as an individual, you've grown as a team person, you've grown in adversity. And we all know that you know, that's when you have the most growth in your life is through a hard situation. So sticking together throughout the year would be the most successful thing. And then growing leaders, like growing and developing a strong leadership core where the guys genuinely like coming to see each other. You gotta like coming to work every day and seeing the people you work with. And that's what football at a point is. You gotta enjoy each other. So
Yep.
the best teams and enjoy each other and enjoy each other's company. So if we could get that, that's a successful year for us.
That's awesome. And I think it just speaks to like the goal of high school sports, right? Like a percentage of them will play college, and an even much smaller percentage will go on to, professional. But they play high school sports because there are so many other things they're learning and growing and developing that will really carry through their entire life.
Very much a lost thing. Very much a lost thing. Like it because it's trickled all the way down to
Absolutely.
high school where it's turned into winning and losing and
Yep.
touchdowns and miming and touches and all of those things. And that's not the grandioso thing of the sport. The grandioso thing of the sport is what you get out of it at the end. Right. So
Yeah, for sure. So, kind of wrapping up with some more lighthearted rapid fire questions. What's your favorite football team? Can be college or NFL.
well, I went to Michigan, coached at Michigan, so Michigan, and then the Lions, of course. Come on, I'm a Lions fan, die hard,
Naturally,
got
you
to.
have to from Detroit. What is your favorite game day snack?
Game day snack. I'm not a big snacker. I like even in general, I'm a meal guy, so I'm not a huge
Okay,
snack guy. So I eat our pregame meal, and then I'm pretty good. And then after the game, we definitely get some pizza. So that's the move.
pizza is a Curtin family game day tradition as well.
Yeah, love that.
What's the best national anthem you've ever heard at a game?
Well, there's two that come out that stick out in my mind. Number one was the Under the Lights game at Michigan when we were Michigan Notre Dame, and they had Blue Angels flying over us. So, it felt like you could touch them. And then there's the anthem, and
Yep.
then Stells are flying, and it's banging. That was pretty magical. And honestly, the our homecoming game, not last season, but 2 seasons ago against Salem when we had the flyover and whatnot, that was super. It was just an amazing night. The sun was setting and the planes flew over. It was amazing. So those two stick out to me as I very poignant memories, and I can vividly see those times in my head.
Yeah. I remember that game. That was awesome. What's the best Super Bowl halftime show you've seen?
I'm gonna go with no, that's not PC. I probably can't do that.
You can say whatever you
uh,
want to say.
I'm in trouble this late in the game. I've been good so far, so I'm in trouble. I don't know. Last year was good. Did Bruce do it? Bruce did it one year.
Yeah.
Springsteen. Yeah, shout out to
Yep.
the boss. Just went to his concert. It was cash. So
Mhm.
yeah, boss probably.
Awesome. Um, what's your favorite stadium you've ever been in?
I've been in quite a few. Now, Penn State, Under the Lights, whiteout at Penn State is magic. I mean, that was, we ended up losing 3 overtimes, but I mean, I remember looking at Kevin Koger and saying, like, this is unreal. This is crazy. Obviously, going to the Horseshoe is quite the experiment or experience. That's a crazy place. And then Iowa, how close Iowa fans are to you on the sideline. People don't realize it's a 7-yard sideline. So you got a yard for the officials, a yard for the coaches, 5 yards for everything else. So you get a bunch of
Oh,
people.
wow.
You're sitting there. Yeah, you're sitting there with your offensive lineman looking and talking scheme, and literally right behind you are Iowa farmers yelling at you and going nuts. So that was kind of a cool deal too.
Oh, that's amazing. And that has to be so, like, the energy from that has to be just like unreal.
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, but that's why football is such an emotional game. I've seen guys in those moments before a game, before a football game, crying, just bawling
Mhm.
because and I'm getting chills thinking about it because everything they put into that, everything they put in that moment, and then you're in that stadium, that energy that you're feeling, and then you got to control it and harness it, and it's just an overflow of emotion, and it's amazing. I love it. It's great. There's nothing better.
How would you say all of those places compare to the Big House? Because I'm a big Michigan fan too. I'm from Ann Arbor, so
Okay.
like, how do those compare?
Yeah, so we had some great atmospheres at Michigan when we were there too. So the big house is a lot like Nebraska. It's just like you look up and it's just a sea of people. I mean, you just see as far as I can see maize, on those maize nights like Nebraska. When you go to Nebraska, all you see is red. I mean, it's just straight out and you're just looking at nothing but red. I mean, so the big house is definitely a top three with the Penn State, Ohio State from an experience standpoint. It is an elite level, elite college stadium.
That's awesome. So out of all of the programs you just mentioned, who has the craziest fan base?
Ohio State's obviously extremely excited about their school, and they don't have a
Yes.
lot of excitement in Michigan. So we went into that hostile environment. As far as how Wisconsin gets it popping pretty good. Those are the batteries.
Mhm.
Like you walk out of the tunnel, and there's all sorts of stories that they used to throw batteries, so they would hit the helmet, and it would just ring your helmet. So you'd be walking through the go out to run out, and all you would feel are batteries hitting you in the head and just ringing in your ears. So, um, so
That's
yeah,
awful.
um, yeah, that. I mean, Iowa was so close. So when you're that close, there's not a microphone there. Okay, so that people can pretty much say whatever they want. So it gets
Yeah,
pretty intense with some of the Iowa folk, especially in high pressure situations. So, yeah, those are the fun ones,
that's fun.
though.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. We really loved getting to talk to you and hear about how we can kind of understand and support local high school football programs better. And hopefully our listeners will have some great takeaways that they can take to their home teams on Friday nights this fall.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. Thanks for having me on.